Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your guy Rudy SKC, and welcome to a brand new video. I hope you guys had a Merry Christmas, and boy did the Pistons give us a present to celebrate today. They went into Sacramento and beat the Kings 114 to 113, and all I can say is, oh my god. That was one of the best comeback victories of the entire year. Your Detroit Pistons were down by 18 points at one point in this game. They were down by 15 at the beginning of the fourth quarter, and they were down by 10 with 4 minutes to go in the game. Cade Cunningham hits a huge three, hits some free throws. Then Malik Beasley goes absolutely nuclear in the fourth quarter. He'd had a relatively pedestrian game up till then. He had 8 points after the end of the third quarter. But his fourth quarter was exactly what the Pistons needed to get them right back into this game. And then the final possession, this was the craziest piece to me. So Cade inbounds the ball to THJ. He looks for a shot. He can't get it. He tries to get the ball to Beasley. Then Beasley, who's hit the last 3 threes in a row, tries to get another shot up. But obviously the team's defending him really well. They're sending a double at him. Then he passes the ball to Jaden Ivey, who pump fakes, hits a 3 and 1, makes the free throw. Pistons win. It was absolutely incredible. One of probably the best feelings I've had as a Pistons fan this entire year. And I really think that this is something to highlight about this game. I think this can really be a culture-building win for the Pistons going forward. And I say that for one major reason, and that's this. For the better part of about 1.5 years, the Pistons have been in extremely tight games going into the fourth quarter. Now, I get the end of last year. The team had basically given up. Monty gave up. He didn't want to be there anymore. The Pistons didn't believe in the coach. And you could see that they just stopped trying. But man, this year, they've played with so many leads in the fourth quarter and blown them away. In the early part of last year, even in the 29-game losing streak, it was the same thing. I mean, maybe they didn't have the lead, but they were in some close games that they just couldn't make the last-ditch effort in the fourth quarter to get the victory. And you can see these recent games, you can see the strides that the Pistons are taking with their situational basketball down the stretch. And a lot of that has to do with Trajan's acquisitions in the offseason. I mean, Malik Beasley was absolutely huge. He's been huge. Tim Hardaway's hit some big shots for us. Tobias, we'll get to him later, but he was another someone we signed in the offseason. But the Pistons' execution in the fourth quarter, I believe that because the Pistons are getting in so many close games, they're building a repertoire of how to execute in the fourth quarter. There isn't a situation that this team hasn't seen. I mean, in all of their victories, it's been a close game. Yes, they're winning by 25 when they start the fourth quarter, and then all of a sudden the other team makes a huge run, cuts it down to 5 or whatever, and the Pistons hang on to win. That's been what we've seen through Pistons win throughout this entire year. And now you're seeing them come from behind, still over-execute against another team with De'Aaron Fox. He was getting whatever he wanted in the fourth quarter. I mean, he was looking unstoppable in the paint area. Every time he came down, I mean, the Pistons, it wasn't like they were playing bad defense. Paul Reed, he was playing great in the paint. Asar Thompson was giving him all he had, and we know how great of a defender Asar is. And you couldn't stop De'Aaron Fox. And even then, the Pistons were able to overcome, make a comeback, and win this game. And I really think that they can take this momentum forward. And if they're able to build their culture on execution down the stretch because of how many tight games they've lost, man, I'd watch out for this team. Now, there are moving past just the end of the game and how enthralling that all was. I want to really move back earlier to the game because I definitely think that there were some things that the Pistons, they obviously didn't play their best basketball to put themselves in an 18-point hole. But first of all, this game was terribly officiated from both sides. And I mean terribly officiated. I know the Pistons won, but there were some calls on the Pistons that were really bad, some calls on the Kings that were really bad. And I think it really boils down to 2 things here. And the first one was almost every foul at the rim, it felt like, came 2 to 3 seconds after the foul actually happened. And the other team was already running in transition. That's terrible for a viewership product. The refs have to do better. The NBA needs them to do better. And the other thing was an inconsistency in physicality. I mean, I have it jotted down here, but there are a couple times when Alex Len came down the lane, and they called Duren for a foul in the paint, and he barely touched him. Same thing, Cade on Malik Monk. They actually reviewed that and still called it a foul. it didn't match the physicality of some other points in the game where, whether it was Cade, De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk, they got absolutely hacked at the rim and they didn't get a call. And then there's another weak offensive foul on Jaden Ivey. I mean, if you cannot be both inconsistent and make late foul calls. I mean, at that point, it looks like you're fixing the game, actually. And the NBA does not need that now. And that's something that they're going to need to fix to improve their ratings. But again, that's something wrong that was externally that I saw from the game from just a pure viewership standpoint. Moving back to the game, like I mentioned earlier, I do want to get to some of the Pistons' struggles that they faced in order to put themselves in an 18-point hole. The first one was Trey Lyles in the second quarter just went absolutely off, and that's something that can't happen. I mean, I think Paul Reed was in there to start to play defense on him, and then Jalen Duren got in there. You cannot let Trey Lyles take over a game. Trey Lyles played for the Pistons a few years ago, and I remember those dark days. You can't win a basketball game if you let Trey Lyles take over the game. And it wasn't like he was just hitting ridiculously insane shots. We gave him like 3 to 4 wide open looks at threes to start off the second quarter, and that just can't happen. And I'm not going to put it entirely on Duren this time either. I mean, there are a few times where it was just because the defense had to collapse. Someone got past someone in the semi-transition, and Duren had to help. And so you leave Trey Lyles wide open for 3, and he's going to hit that. Now, Duren does need to be better in the second quarter, but I thought this game compared to last game, Duren played much better on the defensive end of the basketball. That cannot happen in the second quarter. You need to tighten up. So that's one. The second piece was in the third quarter. So obviously, you look at what Trey Lyles did, that put us in a hole. That's honestly the reason that we were down. If you look at the first quarter, it was pretty even between the Pistons Kings. The second quarter, Trey Lyles took over, and that's when the Kings actually went on a run to go up 12, 13, 14 points. And then let's come to the third quarter, right? To start the third quarter, the Kings and Pistons exchange a few buckets, and the Kings go up 18. And then both teams just go completely cold. The Pistons were playing great defense, but they couldn't hit a shot to save their lives. Cade was amazing in the first half offensively in terms of his shot making. He went super cold in that third quarter, especially from 3. They need to find it. Those are the moments in the games when you need to take advantage and move forward. And looking back at that point in the game, that's something that they're going to need to improve on. Especially, I think Cade needs to improve on it as well. That's when, your 3-ball, he didn't fall 2 shots in a row. You got to take him to the rack, and you got to make the Kings earn it on the defensive side of the ball. You can't give them a freebie. So those are 2 things that, when the other team when the other team goes cold, we need both of our stars to do what they do best. We need them to orchestrate this offense. So those are 2 big areas of concern that allowed the Kings to frankly, have the highest probability of winning this game going into that final 4 or 5 minute stretch in the fourth quarter. And then comes the final reason. The shooting for most of the night was just pathetic. Malik Beasley went crazy in the fourth quarter, and I know Jaden Ivey had a good night from 3, but pretty much everyone else, I mean, Cade, he was hitting some shots in the first half of the game, but that third quarter, his 3 was not falling, and it really sunk his percentage, which, again, kind of sucks for the All-Star voting, but hopefully it's not that big of a deal. But the 3-point shooting was terrible. Tim Hardaway couldn't hit a shot to save his life. Malik Beasley was cold. It wasn't that he was cold necessarily. He didn't get great looks from 3. And Fontecchio was the Fontecchio that we've seen the entire season with the exception of the last few games. No one could hit a shot in the second and third quarter. And that was a big reason why the Kings were able to go on such a run and keep such a lead. And, this is something that we can expect out of the Pistons from time to time. I'm not even mad about it. They're 2-0 on a road stretch right now on a West Coast trip. I thought that there was going to be a game where the shooters just went cold, and I thought this was going to be it. But obviously, they were still able to come back and win this game. But I think those 3 key points were a big reason that the Kings were so successful in having such a big lead throughout this game. Then I also want to talk about this in terms of Cade. He didn't have a great night necessarily shooting the ball. You look at the stats, he was 7 for 24. He didn't turn the ball over that much. I think he had 3 turnovers or something like that I counted in the game. I'll take 3 turnovers any way I can get them from Cade. He shot the ball pretty poorly in the third and fourth quarter. He hit some big shots in the fourth quarter, but he shot the ball pretty poorly then. But the biggest thing for me is 12 free throws. Guys, we made it. Cade is getting calls at the rim, and officials are really starting to look for it now. He's not having to beg officials for, man, that's he hit me on the hand. He doesn't have scratches on his arms walking up and showing the official exactly where he got hit on his hand, and they still don't call a foul. He's getting foul calls. And that's huge for not only the Pistons going forward, but also for Cade to be able to take that next step. And he does need to improve his finishing at the rim, and I think he's going to, because he was much better at finishing at the rim last year if you look at the percentages. So that's something huge. And it's not just this game. The last few games I've been noticing he's been getting a lot more calls at the rim, much more than he got in the beginning of the year. So that's really something that could really help the Pistons going forward. Couple other notes in the game. Marcus Sasser, Paul Reed, those were some huge minutes in the third quarter and fourth quarter. Sasser was playing great defense on Fox. He had a steal at the end of the third quarter to go on a mini run. He had a huge three. Paul Reed hit a three. I don't expect that out of Paul Reed, but he had a huge three, huge mid-range shot in the fourth quarter to help the Pistons stay in it before they went on the run. That's crazy. That's exactly what you're expecting out of those two guys, and they delivered it. And honestly, I really think we need to find more minutes for Sasser in this rotation. Basically, I feel like anytime he's called, he's playing great basketball. So that's something that I know you have Cade and Ivey, and you need to make sure that either one of them is in the game at all times so that you have a primary ball handler. But man, if Sasser could use some more minutes, man, because whenever he's in the game, it feels like positive things always happen. So those are two guys that I really want to shout out there. Tobias played a terrible game yet again. And, I don't know what to say at this point. I feel like it needs to be obvious to JB what needs to happen. I don't think at this point that you can keep starting Tobias Harris and keep running with that starting lineup. I know that Tobias is really the only 4 on this team. You have Bobby Klintman, but he's a second-round pick. Sasser was end of the first round last year, and he's barely getting minutes now. So, it's going to take a miracle for Bobby to get some minutes in the lineup, and me personally, I hope he does. But I know we have no other real 4 on this team. But I think anyway, you still have to just put Asar Thompson at the 4 to start the game at least. Whenever Asar comes into the game, the defense instantly just shoots up for the Pistons. And then even on the offensive side of the ball, you can just see that the ball flows a lot more. He's way more athletic, getting rebounds. He's not being a black hole for the offense. I still trust in Tobias. I know that he's going to figure his shot out, but I just think JV needs to switch something up, maybe put him on the bench for a few games to see if he can get his confidence back. Because I think that's really hurting the team right now, especially in the first quarter with the first unit. They're not able to get as much production out of the offense as they need, and the defensive production is suffering as well. I think putting in Asar Thompson can solve both of that problem, even if it is just for a short burst of the game so you don't compromise on some of that shooting. Looking at the big picture for the Pistons, right, just zooming out of this game, they're 3-0 on this home stretch. They're 14-17, which I believe that already equals the amount of wins we had last year. It's getting close to it, and we're already the 9th seed. If you're looking for a young team like the Pistons to make noise, this is exactly what you want. I think if you told me, with 31 games so far in the season, the Pistons would be 14-17, before the NBA season started, I would take it. I would say that's a success so far. I think the Pistons, they're really starting to find something special in offense. Cade is becoming that star player that we need him to be, game in and game out. He had 33 points today. Didn't have great shooting night, but who cares? He got to the free throw line. He again had 10 assists, low turnovers. He was great in the fourth quarter. This is exactly what you're looking for out of this young Pistons team. And I think that going forward, they can take this momentum. They have one more game left on this road trip before they're back in Detroit for a nice little homestand. And man, I really don't think that there's anything stopping this Pistons team. And I'll tell you this, if the Pistons are in the play-in and I'm another NBA team, I would not want to face them. So that's really going to wrap things up for today's recap of the game. It was a great win for the Pistons, and I'll see you guys back Saturday night for a recap of the Pistons versus the Nuggets. Catch you guys later.